Hello, my name is Logan Williams with CBTV on behalf of Quality Trades. Today I'll be interviewing Carlynn Lackey, a native of San Francisco, California, and a witness to the devastating fires that have been ravaging Northern California. Stay tuned and let's get into it. I saw that you used to live in Sacramento but now reside in the Bay Area, so can you tell me just like, and you don't have to tell your life story, but just like a brief history of your your time here in Sacramento and then why you moved to the Bay, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. I grew up in Sacramento, and I lived there until I turned 19, at which point I went to San Francisco to go to college for psychology. I also wanted to move away from Sacramento because, in my opinion, it's way too hot in the Central Valley. It was then, it's even more so now, I've heard.
Definitely.
So I ended up staying here after I graduated in 2017. So I've been graduated for 3 years now. And since then, I've worked at UCSF Eating Disorders Research Program and for Progress Foundation's residential treatment facilities. So I've been doing work in psychology since I graduated.
My goal with this interview today is to ask you some questions about your experience with the recent string of devastating fires that have been burning unabated through all of California, most recently Northern California, now Southern California. Being in that I'm in Sacramento at the moment, the worst thing I saw from the fires was just the gray skies and the blood red sun, but that was like the extent in the smoke. I was actually up in Napa yesterday, and I believe I was on the other side of the mountain because there was like a little bit of haze, but nothing to indicate that like there's a crazy wildfire raging in Napa and Sonoma County at the moment. I can only imagine what it was like from your perspective, seeing like the red. I don't know if you actually saw the fires or whatnot. So can you just talk about what part of the Bay Area you live in and what it was like to see the devastation up close, and then how you might have been impacted by it?
Yes. So I live in the neighborhood of Outer Richmond of San Francisco. And for those people who aren't native to the Bay Area, Outer Richmond is separate from the city of Richmond. So it's neighborhood on the top of Golden Gate Park, north of Golden Gate Park towards the beach. I think we were protected in a little bit from some of the effects of the fire just because we are right by the beach. But I will never forget the one day when that sky did become really red. I was actually sitting right here, and I remember it because it was a Wednesday and I was on my staff meeting, and the light right here was like kind of orange and yellow the whole time. And I remember that day because it was almost like it was daybreak, that light, except it was like it looked like it was like 6 a.m. up until like 4 p.m. or 5 p.m.
Right.
And that was really strange. And like all my friends and I were talking and texting about it, and it was really unsettling. Like this has been a terrible year for a lot of reasons, but that day, like if the world was gonna end, like that would be the day where it would have made sense to end right then. It was really scary, and we didn't know if it was going to go back to normal. We didn't know if it was going to be like that the next day. It was still like we saw a lot of the smoky skies like you did as well. For me, it was really that red day that's just going to like be in my memory. Glad
to see that it's cleared up at least. I'm just going to read a little blurb that I jotted down. And I wrote, the latter half of the 2010s seemed to have brought unrelenting devastation, the likes of which California has never seen before. There was the Camp Fire in 2018 that destroyed the city of Paradise and ravaged other cities, including Magalia, Cancao, and Chico. Also in that same year and month, the Woolsey Fire burned in Los Angeles and Ventura counties, yielding the same type of destruction and destroying certain portions of cities like Malibu. It's interesting to me that there is often only one major road leading in and out of these communities, and one might wonder if the isolation and tranquility is worth, the fact that at any given moment, everything can be lost in an instant and you'd have to go grab what's valuable and maybe never return. So can you tell me your thoughts on this and the normal that already existed in California, if it's transformed into the new normal, and why people continue to come back, but most importantly, build new homes or new communities knowing that there is so much potential for destruction?
Well, I'll start by saying I think this is absolutely the new normal. I think the fires in Paradise, in my mind, that kind of like bookmarked the beginning of this new chapter of like it's what seems like endless devastating wildfires for many months of the year in California.
Right.
And as far as the communities that continue to come back and rebuild in those areas, I've definitely like looked within myself a lot to see, like, just trying to understand like where they're coming from. And I personally don't think that I would be able to do that, just because of how devastating it would be to lose everything and then to go back to the place where I lost everything. I've also never gone through something like that. It's really hard for me to speak about losing everything when I can't even like comprehend what that would be like. At the same time, I know that for a lot of people, like, their hometowns like are sacred to them, like their birthplace is sacred to them. And that's not the same experience I have with Sacramento, so I can't relate to that. But I have to imagine that that is why so many people just have to go back to where they grew up and rebuild homes there. I can't imagine why else they would be tied to such like a dangerous place.
Can you talk a little bit about, I know you have your background in psychology, can you talk maybe about what the psychological effects at that moment, having to go immediately grabbing whatever you think is valuable, or not being able to grab it, and maybe losing an animal or whatever may be lost in that like exact moment, and then the aftermath of it?
I do think anybody who goes through that experience is experiencing a significant amount of trauma. Trauma is defined as something that makes you feel like your life is in danger, or even if you see that other people's lives are in danger, that can be traumatizing in another way, or if you feel in danger in any way. So people going through those situations are going to come out of it traumatized. And I have to imagine, especially since they'll be staying in an area where this devastation will continue, that the effects of that will come up in like post-traumatic stress disorder, a disorder that impacts people for a long time. Most people know that as PTSD. And the effects of PTSD can have really long-ranging effects. It can cause depression, it can cause anxiety, it can cause rifts in relationships because of a lot of the heated emotions that come up when you're like revisiting that trauma. So it's gonna have an impact on people's mental health for a long time, if not for the rest of their lives. One like very small good thing about this year that I've noticed, and maybe I've noticed because I am very passionate about psychology and connecting with people, I've noticed that this year people seem to have like an empathy overload for people in a way that they haven't had before. I think because we're seeing so many devastating tragedies happening, like whether it's a wildfire, whether it's COVID, whether it's the Floyd like epidemic that started, like everything, it's people are being confronted with terrible things and seeing other people going through them. And I think it's having a huge effect on everyone, and that we're feeling empathy towards people that we don't normally like try to put ourselves in their shoes.
Right.
And then that comes up when communities are coming together to help each other. I think people are feeling more inspired to be good to each other and to take care of each other, because people want to be taken care of in return.
So what measures, if any, were taken to control and contain as best as possible the fires, not only around your neighborhood, but around the city in general?
Within the actual city of San Francisco, we were pretty protected from the fires, but outside of it, I knew a lot of people who did have to go through power outages for a period of time, some in Oakland, I believe some in Richmond as well. Luckily, we didn't have to go through that in San Francisco because there is deemed low risk within the actual city. But all around us, people were more affected by far.
Were there any evacuations that happened around where you were, or maybe close to you?
Not around where I were. I do know people who had like vineyards or like lived near vineyards or worked on them that had to evacuate. And I know some friends who had to scramble and make some space in their own like small San Francisco apartments to bring in some friends or family who no longer had a place to do. And they were still willing to do that and take these people in, even in the midst of like the COVID outbreak.
I know that public safety is very important, and I understand the need for mandatory evacuations. Do you think people who built the home there and choose to live there should have the options to stay there, or do you think mandatory evacuations are necessary for the greater good?
That's a hard one for me. I do think they're necessary for the greater good. As much as I want people to have like the full autonomy to be where they want to be, like physically in the moment, even if that means they don't want to leave, I think in this case, if you're bringing in a team of firefighters who are looking to save this stretch of the block, if you have actual humans in one building that are going to be at risk of dying, those firefighters are going to prioritize those humans, right?
Right.
And if those humans aren't there, then they can better spend their energy on, rescuing the buildings. So if humans stay, then they're going to get in the trouble, in the way of firefighters doing their job. So that's why I do believe mandatory evacuations are 100% necessary.
So why is it important for people who have lost their home, property, and valuables to have hope in times of tragedy such as this?
Well, the work I do right now, I work with people at some of the lowest points of their lives, and many of them have lost everything. And I've learned a lot from this job. And one of the things that I've learned is that hope is 100% the origin of rebirth. You have to have hope and able to even imagine what a new life could be, or imagine like what the next chapter is. So hope is 100% necessary for these people in this time, especially.
So that's kind of the extent of my question. Did you have anything else that you would like to add, or maybe a thought that crossed your mind during the interview?
I think it's really important for people who are going through these devastating tragedies that we're seeing on the news. I think it's really important for us to hear these stories from the people themselves, which I guess that's why you're doing these interviews. So thank you for that. And the reason that is because, as I was saying earlier, I think our society is dealing with the empathy overload. And I think that's a good thing. I really think seeing more of these stories and hearing firsthand accounts will allow us to put ourselves into other people's shoes. And that's when we feel most connected to people. That's when we have the best capacity to help others as well. Well,
Carlynn, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. I know you're pretty busy with your job and everything, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for the work you're doing too.
Thank you. Alrighty.
Bye.
Bye. So I hope everyone enjoyed the interview. For more eyewitness accounts and construction business related news, stay tuned to CBTV. This has been Logan Williams reporting. Take care, and I'll see you next time.